this year's candidate forum. We are so blessed. I am Carrie McKenzie. I am president of the Northshore Council PTSA.
Hello, I am Mindy Worth, VP for Northshore Council PTSA.
So we've been working together, and we're so pleased to be able to bring this forum to you.
I want to introduce you to our moderator tonight, Lisa Surwick, over here to my right. She was formerly on the Washington State PTA Legislative Committee and Region 6 Service Delivery Team. If you were here for any of the last 3 years, our candidate forum, she has been our moderator. She is amazing, and we thank her for returning again this year.
Responses will be timed in order to allow all candidates equal opportunity to share their perspectives in accordance with 501c3 law and PTA policies and guidelines. To begin, each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Following the introductions, the candidates will be asked a series of questions. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for legislative candidates and 1 minute for school director candidates. Each forum will have a lightning round, which is intended to elicit very explicit, short answers to make sure their position is very clearly stated for us. We've made every attempt to generate a broad set of questions by pulling questions and topics from parents, teachers, principals, and community members. Many questions were received by an online survey that was sent out. Even so, we know that we have not touched on every subject in this short amount of time. Therefore, the last section of the school board forum will be devoted to a few audience questions. We passed out index cards on which you may write your questions. However, if you need another index card, please raise your hand to let one of our volunteers know, and they will bring you another one. Please raise your note card in the air, and a volunteer will retrieve your question to be compiled and delivered to the moderator. In order to limit duplication, not all questions will be asked, and your question may not be asked in its exact form. However, if at the end of the evening you still do not have your questions answered, the candidates may be available afterward. Thank you all for helping us move efficiently through this process by respecting these guidelines. And now let's meet our candidates for the Senate in the 45th Legislative District. Jinyoung England and Mankadingra. Jinyoung, you may start with your 3 minutes.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here. I know organizing events takes a lot of work, and for parents to come out and to be a part of this, I know also requires a lot of coordination. I'm a Washington State resident for 3 generations. My family arrived here from Korea in 1875. My paternal grandparents were from the northern region of Korea, and which is now known as North Korea. My dad was 3 when the invasion happened, and they were the lucky ones. They got out. And in 1975, they immigrated here with their adult children. And ever since then, our family has tried to find ways to pay forward the gifts of being American. And those gifts are life and freedom and opportunity. And for 3 generations, starting with my grandfather, he started by working with the Korean immigrant community and helping them start businesses, buy homes, get their children enrolled in public schools. And my father joined the U.S. Army. He retired after 21 years as a disabled U.S. Army vet. My brother has now joined the Army. And the way that I pay that forward is not by joining the military, but I ended up meeting and marrying a Marine who's from here. And for me, it's always been, how can I pay that forward to other people? I started out first, I'm graduating from UW and working with a nonprofit in Africa. My specific project was water well drilling. And secondly, I've had a chance as the daughter of immigrants to work in U.S. Congress and learn how to hear constituents, and also learn firsthand how government can work and how it doesn't work. And for the last 5 years, I've been in technology, bringing solutions for global financial inclusion, and last 2 years specifically, doing work with the Marine Corps in Japan, where my husband is forward deployed, to lead an award-winning app development team. I mention all of that to say that there are different ways in which we can pay forward the gift of being American. And my next hope is that you guys will have the confidence in me to be the next state senator from this district to go to Olympia on behalf of our teachers, our parents, and our students. And just like the late Senator Andy Hill, really be an advocate for education and really be an advocate for especially the children who are stuck in that opportunity gap, whether it's low income or because they come from an immigrant family and need extra language service or special needs. I was that kid on free and reduced lunch growing up, and I grew up in Washington State public schools. I would not be here without our schools. And I really thank each and every one of you for being engaged and involved and part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all of you for being here, and thank you so much for putting this event together. I do have a bit of a cold. I think all of us parents know what happens the first month of going back to school, so you'll have to bear with my voice. As you know, my name is Manka Tingra, and I'm running for the Senate seat in this district. And as a first-time candidate, the question that I get asked the most is, why are you running? So here it is. A lot of this started for me back in November with our national election. I was actually having a very large election day party at my house. And the reason why I was having such a large election day party actually goes back to 8.5 years ago when President Obama was elected. I don't know how many of you remember, but the Seattle Times had done this wonderful front page piece showing the photos of all the presidents in the US. And I remember opening it up on my dining room table, calling my 4-year-old daughter and my 6-year-old son to come and take a look at all the images of the presidents of the US. And my 4-year-old looks at me and says, "Where's the page with all the women presidents?" So I was having a very large election day party in November because I wanted to show my now teenagers the face of our first female president. Clearly the evening didn't go as planned. What it did do was really make me think long and hard about what I had been doing for the last 20 years and what I wanted to do for the future. You know, when I talk to people, they tell me that they want elected officials that are local, that are experienced, that are professionals. Leaders who are interested in solving problems. And that is what I have been doing for our community for over 20 years. As a senior prosecuting attorney, I actually oversee our Veterans Court, our Mental Health Court, and our diversion program. Really making sure that people who need services and support are placed on supervision rather than going to our jails and prisons. And in that capacity, I have been doing a lot of policy work around mental health, criminal justice, and also domestic violence, because I'm one of the founders of CHAYA, the South Asian Domestic Violence Organization. I helped found it 20 years ago in my living room in Redmond, mostly my kitchen. And I was on the board for 8 years. And then I had my kids. So my son Cuddy is now at Redmond High School. My daughter Isha is in Redmond Middle School. And like a lot of us parents, I've been very involved in our PTSA. I've got the Golden Apron Award for work I did with Passport Club, Chess Club, Math Club. And so to me, when I look at the issues that we're dealing with as a society, it's education, mental health, criminal justice, the issues that I've been working on for 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now ask the candidates a series of questions. They will have 90 seconds to answer each question with no follow-up. If elected, what would be your highest legislative priorities? What committees would you seek to join, and why do you want to be a Washington State Senator? Assemblyman, we'll start with you.
Throughout my campaign, I've really prioritized doorbelling, going door to door and meeting people and asking them, what are your priorities? Because I believe the role of a state senator is to really represent the people in their district. Over and over, the top 3 that comes to mind for people are quality education for all kids, reducing traffic congestion, and feeling overburdened with our taxes at the moment. The committees, based on that, the committees that I would hope to serve on include education, transportation, and like the late Senator Andy Hill, our Ways and Means to Budget Committee. Sorry, what was the third part? Oh, why do I want to be Washington? Sorry. I had an incident yesterday. I'm still a little woozy. I want to serve as a Washington State Senator because, again, I'm a Washington kid that grew up and went to Washington schools. And here is an opportunity that I can give back to the state that has given my family so much. And my skills, having been someone who worked in the private sector, the public sector, and the nonprofit sector, I understand that the role of state government is to bring people together of all different of all different backgrounds, of all different ideas, and be open-minded and consider all possibilities, especially when it comes to our kids' education. I think that a balanced government in our state is,
So I firmly believe that a fully funded public education system is the foundation of our democracy. It really is what gives every child an equal opportunity to succeed. So education is definitely something that I will be prioritizing. Being on the Ways and Means Committee is also a priority because the property tax increase that was imposed by Republican senators this year is atrocious for Eastside families. It's making this district unaffordable for families, and that's not okay. And I want to make sure that we are taking care of people, small businesses, and our children. So definitely the Education Committee, definitely Ways and Means, and given my experience with mental health, it would have to be Human Services. Really making sure that we can provide early intervention for issues around mental health. Again, same goes for our schools and education. Really making sure that people can afford to live in the areas in which their families grow up. And I'm running because I think we need people who have a history of solving problems, who have been doing that. And I'm interested in representing people and really making sure that we're solving the very real problems we have in this state. And that's what I'm committed to doing. Thank you.
Legislator moved to fund education. Please provide your view of how funding education was addressed. Was it equitable? Did the actions satisfy the McCleary mandate? We'll start with you.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I wasn't sure what you were printing. I think the legislators did take some steps forward in making sure there's more funding for education, but they did not do a good enough job. We still have ways to go. We have to make sure that we have smaller class sizes. My daughter Isha is in her 8th grade science class in a classroom full of 35 kids. One teacher, 35 13-year-olds. That's not the best way to learn science. My kids in elementary school, middle school, high school have always had a class in a portable. We're in one of the best school districts in the state. We should be able to afford classrooms. So yes, we still have ways to go forward, but funding it through raising property taxes was the wrong way to go. I would love to be able to roll that back next year, making sure we're closing some of the over 900 corporate tax loops that exist in the tax codes, and really making sure that we have a good understanding of where the money's coming from and where it's going. And I think I lost the last part of that question.
Did the actions satisfy the McCleary decision?
I do not believe this satisfied McCleary. And we definitely need to make sure we need to do more with mental health services, more early interventions for our children, and those were programs that were not fully funded under McCleary. So I'm looking forward to hopefully working on all of those issues next year. Thank you.
So when we think about the McCleary decision, I think we have to look at it in its full context. And number one, it was under one-party control of our legislature that the state failed to fund basic education. And it wasn't until the late Senator Andy Hill became a part of that team, and there was a balance of power in our legislature that for the first time that the state not only fully funded education, but also increased funding not once but twice. Even AG Ferguson, has mentioned in his note that as of now, the increase in school funding is breaking records. A little over half of our total operating state budget now fully funds education. When I talk to teachers at the doorstep, when I talk to parents, the question is not, there isn't enough money, the question is, where is the money going? And I think that's a valid question to ask. I think that as a state, this McCleary decision, I know Ms. Dinger said it was Republicans who passed it. It was a bipartisan bill. If you look and see who actually voted for it, Democrats also voted for the bill. It was a bipartisan deal to deal with the inequity in the system created when one-party control failed to fund basic education and therefore left local districts to raise local levies. The agreement caps local levies. I wouldn't have voted for it because I think that they could have done more to further exempt some exemptions in order to find the money, but I believe it's a step in the right direction, and that's why we need a balance of power to make sure everyone is represented.
Okay, cost of living in the 45th district and the surrounding communities have far outpaced wages. What can the legislature do to either reduce the cost of living or increase wages? How will you ensure that lower income individuals will be able to live where they work? Sorry, sir. Okay.
So that definitely is another issue that we as a campaign are starting to tackle. Our property values are increasing at a rate that's unsustainable, and it's because our economy is booming, our population is growing, there isn't enough affordable housing. Part of that is due to this old law, the Growth Management Act, that needs to be addressed in the legislature. That's why, I oppose at this time, and until there is evidence that we need, I oppose a state income tax, I oppose a capital gains income tax, because people in our district are bleeding through the nose in terms of taxes. Property values are increasing, and therefore property taxes are increasing. The McCleary Agreement did put a cap on mobile tax levies. I think if we're serious about our budget and spending, we need to look at how those finances are being spent, because more money, it's proven, more money does not improve education outcomes. So what is our goal? Is our goal to improve education outcomes, to raise the graduation rate, to increase career-connected learning for our students? Or is the goal simply just to get more money? And then the question being, where does that money go? I think that parents, teachers, students, and the legislature, we all need to be working together to clearly identify what are the outcomes that we hope to achieve with education funding. And that's why property value, funding education through property tax and a portion of sales tax.
So affordability is a huge issue. When we bought our first house 21 years ago in Redmond, we paid under $200,000 for it. The principal at Einstein Elementary School has changed every 2 years because that principal had to commute over an hour each way to get to school because she couldn't afford, and we had no principal for 2 years, they couldn't afford to live in the area in which they were working. And that is a problem. We have to make sure our teachers are paid a wage that they can afford to live in the areas in which they're teaching. And when that happens, it impacts the whole community because our schools are not a commodity. They are a community, and we have to nourish that community. When my son was in second grade, it was Valentine's Day, he was sick, he couldn't go to school. And in second grade, it's a big thing because you make those pretty boxes and everyone in class has your Valentine's Day card. And that evening, there was a knock on the door, and it was his teacher. She lived across the street from us, and she brought him his Valentine's Day box. That's something I'm always going to remember. That's something that he's always going to remember, because that's what schools are. They're a community. And so we have to make sure that our teachers can afford to live in the areas in which they work. And that comes with making sure we are paying them appropriately and rolling back the property tax increases, finding other sustainable revenue sources. Thank you.
Moving on to taxes. Tax reform has long been a hot topic here in Washington State. Please provide your view on the use of income, capital gains, sales, state property, B&O, and other taxes. What will you do to address tax equity? It's your turn.
So, yes, we do have the most regressive tax system in the country. That's a fact. You will see it written on multiple publications. That's what the numbers say. So how do we address it? Now, we cannot have a state income tax in the state. The Supreme Court has ruled on it. So that's up the table. I know Seattle's doing its own thing, but that's fine for Seattle. And so what are we left with? Unfortunately, our state has few options. We have a sales tax, we have our B&O, and we have a property tax. And that, frankly, is what our options are. So what I would love to do is really focus on where is that money coming from and where it's going. The first thing we do when we run nonprofits, when we run our own household, is have a good accounting of what's coming in the system and what's going out of the system. We have to make sure that money that we're spending because those are the things that matter. So let's start closing those over 900 corporate tax loopholes. Corporations that are not contributing to our economy, that's where we need to start. Just this year, with our property taxes going up, the other corporations who actually got an exemption were these oil companies that just transport oil from North Dakota to our ports to sell overseas. They got a tax break while we're paying increased property taxes. That's a problem. And that's where we start in addressing our revenue. Thank you.
Tax reform in our state, if we want to have a serious discussion about tax reform, starts by first revealing how a state is using its finances and where it's going and being held accountable to people. You know, I don't think that the state should treat people like an ATM machine or a blank checkbook. And the state first has to show accountability for how their funds are being spent before they go to people for more revenue. You know, not having a state income tax in Washington state offers us a competitive advantage, not only in terms of building our economy, but in terms of jobs for Washington kids. And I'm a Washington kid who went to Washington schools, and I want to make sure that our kids not only can get educated in our universities for the careers that will enable them to care for their own families, but also to live and raise their families here in Washington. And you do that by not having a state income tax. I'm also opposed to this idea of a capital gains tax for instead of having, you know, property taxes pay for education. And here's why. People who have any sort of capital gains, whether it's a house or investments, you know, these are people who were able to and made the decision to take care of themselves. We can't put them in a position where now they have to depend on the government in their old age. And so when it comes to tax reform, we need to be sure that, number one, we are held accountable as hopefully future legislators on where the money is being spent. And number two, having a plan where money is being spent wisely before we go to the people and say we need more.
Thank you. The World Economic Forum estimates that 65% of kids entering kindergarten today will find employment in job roles that do not yet exist. What kinds of things can our legislature do to ensure our educational system prepares students to not just find a job, but create a job in a global world where competition, technology, and efficiency are changing the landscape for job creation?
This is like my bailiwick because I am so passionate about kids finding their passion and their purpose. I got lucky, you know, growing up. I had mentors who told me, catch on fire and everyone will come from miles around to watch you burn. Meaning, you know, this mentor encouraged me not to be afraid to pursue my passion. And it turns out my passion is helping people and solving problems. And I've done it in a variety of capacities. And I think, you know, when I think about kids today, and I think about our education system, you know, I've realized that, you know, the economy is dynamic, our population is dynamic, education should also be dynamic. Meaning that, you know, we shouldn't just have one plan and stick to the plan forever. But, you know, every year we should be evaluating, you know, are we providing our kids with career-connected learning in order to prepare them for the future? Are we exposing our kids to innovative and creative industries and opening up their minds and making it possible for kids to imagine themselves in all kinds of different jobs and industries? When I spoke with one of our superintendents, you know, one of the focuses that I heard was ensuring that kids know that there isn't one path to success in life, that there are multiple paths to success. And I think we as a society need to be doing a better job of exposing kids to all of their possibilities.
So my husband works at SpaceX. Talk about being part of what the future's bringing. So we have a lot of conversations about, you know, what does this new generation look like? I would love to see a state of Washington which is graduating leaders for the future. Leaders who are going to take this state to the next level when it comes to green technology, clean energy, new ways of doing things, AI, and all of that comes down to our education system. And I have to say, Our schools do an excellent job. They need more resources, but they do an excellent job. The choice schools that we had in the Lake Washington School District, obviously I'm partial to them, I'm sorry, North Shore, but that's where I have a lot of examples. I have a lot of friends who go to North Shore school districts. The STEM program, the Adventure and Environment School, Stella Scala, I mean, they really are working hard to reach children at where they are, the Quest program. We just need those opportunities to exist for a larger population. You know, right now, what's the wait list for the international school? I know it's over 300 because my daughter was at 220. We need to make sure those wait lists are down so people have more opportunities. But this is where we make sure we have apprenticeship programs, internship programs, meet the child where they are. You know, I'm so fortunate that through the schools, you know, I coach Destination Imagination. Talk about having children soar when given an opportunity. So let's continue doing that and making more options available. Thank you.
One more question. If you were attending a national education conference representing the state of Washington, what would you point to as our state's biggest strength, think bragging point, in K-12 education, and our biggest challenge? Ms. Pinger?
Excellent question. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier is, you know, I'm really proud of how passionate our teachers are. And I'm just going to give you a story to explain why I'm so proud of these teachers, and I think that's what our strength is. In the Quest program in Lake Washington, in 8th grade, the Questies do National History Day. Our Gen Eds don't. And when I mentioned that to the teacher a few years ago, and I said, hey, wouldn't it be great if all 8th graders could do National History Day? Next year, guess what happened? Every single 8th grader did National History Day because our teachers stepped up and did what they could to make sure each child had that opportunity. So I'm very proud of that, of the quality of teachers we have and how they are so compassionate and driven to do right by their students. And the failing, I think, is a failing on the part of the legislators who are not helping the school system and the teachers achieve what they want. That is having an individualized plan for success for each and every child. So definitely the failure would be on the part of our elected officials who have not stepped up to the plate like our teachers do and our school districts do each and every day. Thank you.
I think I would mention two things. Number one, the late Senator Andy Hill, he didn't get to see this bill passed, but he started a bill, sponsored a bill for parapros, that's paraeducators. You know, in our state, we do have a overflowing classroom problem, but we also have a problem where we're not recruiting enough teachers for all the students that we have. And so what the parapro bill does is it enables people who start off as paraeducators to then basically get on a track to be a teacher, to be in an environment where they're mentored and have the support that they need before they make the plunge into being a teacher, because we also have teachers burning out far too quickly because of how fast our population is growing. The second thing that I would be proud to talk about is our choice schools and charter schools. Because in Washington State, charter schools, those that go to charter schools, over 70% come from the kids in the opportunity gap. Low income, kids from immigrant families, and kids with special needs. And being able to provide parents with options, whether it's choice schools or charter schools, also helps to alleviate classroom sizes. And the Parapros bill helps support teachers in classrooms. Because in order to take care of this population boom, we need more buildings, but clearly we're not building fast enough to deal with the population, so we need to look at these other creative, innovative, out-of-the-box ideas to deal with this and provide the best environment for teachers and students.
So that ends our essay part. We now have 4 short answer questions. You will have 20 seconds to answer each one. First one, right now to pass a bond to raise funds to build schools, a local bond ballot measure must have 60% plus 1 of the vote. Do you support changing the law so that a simple majority of voters, 50% plus 1, can pass a bond?
Yes.
You actually have 20 seconds.
I'm good with that answer. You know, well, I could go on. refer you to my early answers about still having portables. We worked hard at Einstein Elementary for 2 years to get enough money to build a playground because we didn't have money in Redmond, in one of these affluent areas, so that our kids could have a playground.
I oppose it because when we build new buildings, I think we need to do our due diligence in educating the public in committing to what amounts to a second mortgage for families that live in these school districts. I think that, again, before we go to people and say we need more money, that whoever is asking for that needs to do their due diligence in providing a comprehensive plan so that the families that are having to pay it can be equipped to do that.
Okay, number 2. Should the legislature revise the definition of basic education to include early learning?
Yes, because we have learned, studies have shown that when we focus on kids from kindergarten to 3rd grade, that is when the most improvement happens. But also, if we don't focus on kids in that age gap, then that's where the biggest gaps start to happen once they're older.
Absolutely. I think we see that on a daily basis.
Short and sweet. Number 3, do you support a paid-by-the-mile transportation tax?
Oh, yeah. I gotta say, I have to give you a lawyer's answer and say it depends, but that does not sound like a good idea. I think we can do better or do something different.
I do not support it because talk about a regressive tax. And that really hurts people who are not earning enough clearly to live close to their workplace. It really hurts normal working everyday families. And I actually support bringing more accountability and transparency to Sound Transit and their actions and their taxing authority.
All right, we're on the last one. This is the hardest one. Will the Seattle Sounders clinch their spot in the playoffs? We'll call 20 seconds.
If I had a magic ball, and if I could answer that question, I would, but I don't. My hope is yes.
I gotta be honest, my sports knowledge stops at 60 acres. Or Marymore Park. So that is one I would defer to the rest of you on doing the poll for.
And that does it for this part. Thank you so much to our candidates for coming. We greatly appreciate your thoughtfulness and efforts, and thank you so much for throwing your hat into the ring. We really appreciate that very much, and we wish you a lot of success in your campaigns.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.